In this case, I'm just gonna sing some random notes and some random licks and runs and stuff, and let's see what happens. Ah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. What? Yeah. Oh, oh yeah, yeah. Okay, so there's a plugin that's a built-in plugin in Ableton. It's called Simpler. So I'm gonna drag it onto an empty MIDI track. Then I'm gonna take the file that I made with my vocals and just drop it in. So, and now I'm gonna just mute the audio track of the vocals, and I can play my voice on the keyboard. And you have to put it in slice mode for that.
Manipulate. Next, I'm going to crop the sample because we'll be taking slices from it. So to an extent, the shorter the sample, the easier it is to manage. But we also want to make sure the sample is long enough that there's some interesting variety in there. Next, I'm going to pull up Simpler. And I'm just going to drag the sample into Simpler. I'm going to set Simpler to slice mode and the slice by parameter to beat. So this will divide up the sample quite nicely for my purposes here. Now from here, it's just a case of playing around on the piano roll, because each of these notes is now going to play a different part of the sample, and just finding out what sounds good. Now, what I've decided to do in this case as well is actually duplicate this track. So one version is going to be pretty low-key, just background stuff, and the other one is going to take more of a melodic lead. Now by default the slicer goes into monophonic mode, but you can easily switch this to polyphonic. That'll allow you to create more complex and interesting, richer patterns as well.
You've gotta run into the light.
Another spot for here. Now this is another tip as well here. If you have this warped, you're gonna see this warp marker here, and the cool thing about it is that you can move it to the right and to the left to kind of randomize this a bit and just, you know, try and go trial and error to find the vocal chop loop you want. For instance, here we can do this, or maybe move it more.
The first thing we want to do is obviously bring in some vocals, and a cappella is best because then there's more opportunity to get different chops from it. I'm just going to drag in this a cappella from Splice. It doesn't matter if it's in the same key or not, no worries, because we're going to be changing the notes of each vocal chop anyway. We know this is 128 BPM because Splice told us, so I'm just going to rewarp, put in 128 there, Put it into complex pro mode, that's very important. And now it's time to chop up the vocals. Now what I like to do is just solo it, and then I turn off the grid in Ableton Live by holding Command and pressing 4, and that allows me to kind of jump to the exact place I want without being stuck to the grid. And what we're looking for in our chops is firstly tonal sounds. So breaths and clicks and things like that aren't good. So if we listen to this, that hiss isn't good, but this is a better note because it's actually hitting a note. It's also good to look for chops that are not changing note halfway through. So if they just stay on one note, that's going to make your life much easier. Sorry. So let's just grab that, Command and E to split it, delete what we don't need, just drag it. It's nice to mix some of the chops perhaps with a transient at the beginning and some of them just kind of a big block of sustain. Okay, so it changes note there, so we're going to splice it there, cut it there. Now I'm doing this really quickly, but you might want to spend a bit more time choosing the chops that you really love. But this is all good, we'll still get a good result. And it's good if it's one syllable per chop as well.